So, hello everyone. Here's a video on demand. It's about explaining the scenery layers in Explain 10. And what I found is a very good web page that I'm going to show you quickly. And it's actually on the aerosoft.com forum. It's called an article about the WXP scenery order. Now, WXP is a tool that can create a kind of OSM out again kind of scenery in Explain from information coming from the internet file. Yeah, it also explains, and that's a good thing here. That's why I'm showing you this article. It actually explains very shortly the different types of exclusions, smart exclusions, airport exclusions, overlay scenery. But the best part of it, and that's why I'm using this, is this picture. I'm going to put the link in the show notes here. It shows you actually the scenery layers in Explain. All right. So that's why this page. And when we look at this image here, below this actually here, down there, you kind of get a second, you could actually take this picture and put them below each other. The lower one, you would always write Explain default airports, Explain overlay sceneries, Explain mesh, and Explain. Now, well, they don't have photo, I think. It's more like textures. So, because below this, what you see here for the custom scenery, you have the same kind of hierarchy for Explain itself. Everything that's default, standard airports and stuff from Explain that come with it when you install it. And actually, the default airports have become better in Explain 45, and I think there's a huge number of airports being developed and going to be part of the next updates as well. So there are a lot of airports now that come ready with kind of Lego brick kind of scenery stuff, but it's much better than the plain tarmac and runway things that we used to get in most of the world in Explain. Anyway, but that's below this here. What we are looking at here is when you get yourself a custom scenery, additional scenery that you want to add to Explain, you could download those from flightsim.com, has a huge database in the meantime. Also, obviously, the forum Explain.org. So these are the two sources, main sources of freeware. There's XPFR, the Explain France. They make superb stuff as well. There also are links to HD Mesh. I think they're called XPilot or something like that. I'm not very good at names. And there's photo scenery, so there's a website where you can download kind of photo scenery for most of the world, I think, if I remember correctly. There's Spain UHD, which is high definition, ultra high definition, actually, photo scenery for Spain. You need to have a good system and a huge hard drive for that, and a very good internet connection to download all that stuff. So there is really a lot of stuff available, and when you download and unpack those sceneries, you need to make sure that they are getting installed in the correct way. And the main mechanism for installing sceneries in Explain is the so-called scenery underscore packs INI, and you find that in your Explain folder under custom scenery. That's the main important file that you usually have to deal with. There are two possibilities. First of all, you can edit it manually. So you could actually go open this with an editor like I've done here. You need to make sure that you don't delete this stuff, and then you start just hacking in your scenery pack lines. Now each line consists of scenery pack, and then comes the relative path to your Explain root folder. So in my case, it's on the J drive called J Explain 10. So everything under J Explain 10, in my case, it's the custom scenery folder. And this is a sample scenery. That comes from the AutoGate plugin that does moving gates. I just installed this in order to try it out and test it, and also look at how they've done things, because I was playing around with one of my sceneries here, and I wanted to put in AutoGate and stuff like that. So this is a scenery in my local folder. Now there is a speciality, and that is you can use shortcuts. So, and also what you can do is you can actually place your scenery on some other hard drive. Why have I done this? Well, I have an SSD. It's a 512 megabyte SSD, and I run Xplane and I run also Prepared on that SSD. Now, first of all, if I would start to cram up my SSD with all the sceneries I have for Prepared and for Xplane, I would end up filling it up in no time, because both simulators take quite a bit of space, and the remaining space, the sceneries I've got for Prepared as well as for Xplane. Xplane is more freeware. Prepared is a sort of a mix of freeware, but more payware than that. It would cram up my disk. It would make it slow, because the more files you put or even on an SSD, the slower it will get. And it's not really a good idea. In order to keep it fast and sleek, you need to make sure that you don't cram your SSD drive full with stuff, lots of files and stuff. So what I've done is I've got this conventional disk. It's a sort of a terabyte thing, and it has loads and loads and loads of space. And I place my sceneries on that, and I use so-called symbolic, or the shortcut links in Windows, or symbolic links, I think, in Linux. I use that in order to not have the files on my J drive, and I link it kind of into the scenery pack.ini by using the full path to the scenery. Okay. And what I found out is, since I have the Xplane organizer, the XP organizer or X organizer program, I'll show you that in a moment, is that there is a scenery pack disabled command. Because what I did before is I always moved things out and just made sure that the custom scenery folder just contains what I want it to have for that session of Xplane. Because I always want to try and keep things to load at the absolute minimum. So there were two things that I learned from the X organizer and also from the guy who develops it. Because first of all, he pointed me to the shortcut stuff. I didn't know about that, and about the fact that you can use any kind of path. I thought it was kind of a set thing that you need to have it in your custom scenery folder. No, it's not like that. But also the X organizer tool showed me that this command exists. I didn't know about that either. And so since then I have all the scenery that I activate, I keep it in there. I do not start deleting things anymore or moving things anymore. I keep it in there. So it has kind of grown in recent months. It's still not as big as it would be when I'm finished, but I'm only taking in scenery one by one when I need it, because you don't need all the scenery at all times. So whenever I have an airport that I want to fly to, or I've bought a new airport, then I'll add it here to this folder. Now this scenery packs INI file, if you don't have one, it will be generated by Xplane. If you have one that is different to what it finds in the folder, it will generate it automatically. So in other words, Xplane will create your scenery packs INI, and what can happen is it puts all the entries in alphabetical order, and that can cause trouble, because you need to make sure that, and we are going to look here at this again, you need to make sure that mesh sceneries are lower, also in the file, by the way. Okay, so high here means high in the priority, low here means low in the whole priority thing here. Okay, so you need to make sure that the kinds of HD mesh, for example, I've created a subset of the HD mesh freeware for UK. So that I've given it 5 Zs because of the alphabetic sorting. It would then automatically place those HD meshes at the lowest level. If I want something to be over the meshes, I would call it ZZZZ 4 times Z. If I want to have anything above that, I would call it 3 times Z, 2 times Z, 1 times Z. Well, 1 times Z I don't, because China, for example, has Z as the ICAO code, which I use for my airport sceneries. And here you can see this. They're all called ZZZZ, although since I have Xorganizer, I wouldn't really need to rename those anymore, but I still do it because if Xplane happens to sort my INI file on its own because it thinks there's a difference, I want to make sure that they still come in the right location and not somewhere else. Okay, so that's the scenery packs INI, and as I say, you need to make sure that airport files are at the top. So we can see that here, for example. These are Antarctic airports, they are Antarctic stations here. Then, for example, I have the Marshall Islands, PKMJ, and somewhere in between, strewn around, are the library files. The library files, they are a little bit special. They don't need to be in a specific position because library files, they do have a library.txt file, and Xplane reads that and knows then where a particular library is. And when a scenery makes use of that library object, so, but then all kinds of, on the forum Xplane.org you can download tons of them, and many of the airport designers, the freeware ones, they use the Open Scenery X, for example. That's probably the most used kind of scenery library, additional scenery library. But there are other ones as well, and you have to make sure that there are in person, like they need to be in your custom scenery file, not as a link. They have to be in there. So these are folders that I do not use with a symbolic link. The libraries are actually there themselves. So Open Scenery X, for example, there's the NAPS library, Mr. X library. There's all kinds of libraries. You have to be careful. If you want to do your own scenery, really check if you are allowed to use objects, especially when you want to publish that scenery. If you're not publishing a scenery, you can use things. Let me think. I think it's the NAPS library or one of those libraries. Oh no, something with an X. In one of those libraries, I think it was the XS library, they do not want you to make use of those objects. They belong to a particular scenery designer, and he does not want you to make use of that library without his consent. So just be aware of that, okay, in case you want to go about making some scenery and publish them. But the Open Scenery X, for example, is free to use, and a lot of the other here are basically free to use. Obviously, when you make use of a library, make sure that you first of all mention it, because people who want to use your scenery need to have those libraries, so they need to download them, and also obviously mention them in the credits that you've made use of those. Anyway, that's just in case you want to make sceneries. So that's the scenery packs INI, and yeah, well, let's have a look at a tool, the Open Scenery, the Xorganizer, I wanted to say, version 0.6. That's actually the latest version of this tool at the moment, at the time of doing this video. And the really great thing about this tool is that it kind of organizes all your scenery and library files in the custom scenery folder according to this here. So what you can see here is what's low, apart from the needs attention. What's low comes also low here, and comes low in the scenery packs ini. And anything that's higher above also rises here in this hierarchy. So at the top is the airports. The regional sceneries, they are kind of they're probably photo mix of photo, OSM, and overlay stuff. For example, some airports have their city, the surrounding city with it. So they come in two separate folders. You have the airport and you have that kind of city surrounding. Could be with photo scenery or not. And so these kind of regional sceneries, you can put just one below. They usually need to be below the airport scenery. And when guys make sceneries like that, they make sure that the naming of the folders is so that in case automatic generation of the scenery taxonomy takes place, that they actually come in the right order. Okay. Then comes the W2XP OSM. Now, overlay sceneries, I've shown you this here. Okay, any kind of yeah, in FSX you would actually call it autogen. So it's the buildings, the streets and stuff. Explain comes with an OSM based scenery, so they use a database, but it's relatively, I would call it, low resolution. These OSM to XP and Word to Explain and those, they are based on higher resolution information, and therefore you would get a higher, probably a larger number of objects, and in most cases also more accurately looking objects like towers and churches and stuff like that, not just kind of brick, Lego brick autogen. But it depends on what type of OSM scenery you put here. There's also something called tree lines and farms. That's a freeware. You get it from the same site where you can get the HD meshes from. And those kind of things, they are to be on this level. He put the libraries in the middle, but the libraries aren't that important you could also put them at the top, because libraries are not accessed the same way as the other layers. They are called by the sceneries by name. So something looks for open scenery X and then blah 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 blah, some object name. And as long as the libraries are in the custom scenery and have a valid structure and a valid library.txt, I think, that's the file which defines the library, Explain will know where to get it from. Okay. Overlays photo scenery. Now that is yeah, it's always a bit difficult because you have photo scenery and overlay photo scenery. Now photo scenery, let's go to the lower one. For me, these are huge areas of photo scenery. So there is Spain UHD, for example. They have high definition photo stuff from Spain. I have only one tile. It's really big. It takes ages to download, and it takes away, obviously it takes away memory, because it needs to load these high definition photo scenery stuff. I have the Balear Islands, for example. The Canaries, I have some photo scenery from Malta. Yeah, all that kind of stuff. Above that, I have, yeah, it's kind of auto photo scenery for a specific small region. But the thing is, I wasn't really sure when to use the overlay photo scenery and when to use the photo scenery folder. So I kind of, the rule that I've come up with for me at the moment is larger regions I put in the one, and smaller regions, and I can see now New Zealand overlay is probably a little bit, would probably be more suited to be down here. So I could put that here. Okay, but Wellington, for example, that's stuff around a specific city, or here the Heard Island in Antarctica, or Corsica RDS. There's a Corsica RDS, and there's the Corsica, where is it? There's also photo scenery, I thought. I might be wrong here. So anyway, it's not always a clear-cut science where you put things, as long as in the grand scheme of things, it's on the proper level. Okay, and in this case, it needs to be below the overlay stuff, but above the mesh. Yeah, and the lowest is the mesh itself, and they differentiate between UHD and HD meshes. So the HD meshes, that's the freeware stuff you get from, what's it called, Xpilot. I'm not very good with names. I'll see if I can put this in the show notes. I actually created subsets. So I took files and rearranged them for myself. There's quite a bit of work, and you need to really know what you're doing. But anyway, these are the high definition, and these are ultra high definition meshes. Now there are some for the Alps, I think for the Pyrenees, and some other areas. I tried them, but unfortunately my PC with 8 gigabytes of memory and a 2 gigabyte graphic card cannot handle it, really. I end up with, out of memory, even in X-Plane 64-bit, and a very slow load and a very, it's a kind of a slideshow thing. So it doesn't work on my PC. I'm just not strong enough for that. Therefore, I'm not using the UHD meshes. But who knows, if I upgrade my hardware in probably a year or two from now, because I already have my PC now for several years, and yeah, could be that I'm upgrading, and next time I might actually go a little bit higher when it comes to the specs, CPU and all that kind of stuff, then I will be able to use UHD meshes. The reason why they are above the HD meshes is that you can have the HD mesh sort of as the huge areas, but UHD meshes only cover a specific area, and you can place them on top of each other, which means that as soon as you enter the UHD mesh range, it will actually count. And as soon as you leave it, you're back on the HD mesh, or if there is no HD mesh, back to what X-Plane comes with, the standard low resolution mesh that comes with X-Plane. So that's about it about the XP scenery layers. I hope that helped. And yeah, this tool here, I've shown it before, but what I really find great is the fact Xorganizer, you get it on the forum X-Plane.org. What I really like about this program is that it helps you to actually arrange your sceneries visually, so you don't have to rely on the proper folder naming or on editing the scenery packs INI, which can be tedious. It actually helps you to organize it visually, and not only that, what you can also do is you can go here, you can create your profiles. For example, I have an Antarctic profile, or scenery set as he calls it, which contains only scenery I want to use when flying in Antarctica. So for example, I've activated the Antarctic meshes and nothing else. There are some photo scenery. Well, actually this one, this by accident, this is Switzerland. I need to change the set. Then Heard Island, there's also a G2XPL overlay. And then there is the libraries, so I've got all the libraries on. Then is OSM scenery. There is actually some from Antarctica. Oh yeah, this is a new scenery, so I need to change this profile again. New stuff always is activated, even on sets that you have already preloaded. So I will need to turn this off, and probably also turn off Switzerland. So, and finally there are the airports. Yeah, again we have a new airport. I just added it, and here's the Antarctic airports. And what I do then is I can save, click on Antarctica, and now the current set is saved. And the next time I call it up, I get the only the Antarctica files. And the same is with the Canary Islands. Yeah, same thing again. New stuff actually shows up even on the profiles. That's actually something that I might want to ask the developer to have a look at, because if I load a set, I do not expect new scenery to pop up. But it's not bad. It's not a problem. It's just I always have to watch out, because I might have scenery in there that I don't want to have in a profile later on. Not that it's really a problem. Yeah, and this is what the scenery file looks like. You can see it here. All the disabled stuff is what we have turned off, and anything that has no disabled here is actually active. For example, you can just see that we still have the HD Global Spain active, which is also not what I would want it to have. So let's turn that off and store it again. So Antarctica for the moment. Oh, Sarajevo. Save Antarctica. Oh, Germany. Yeah. Oh, and Spain. Well, I must have. Oh, I think I clicked on another profile. That's why I have them now all. I shouldn't have done that. Anyway, you see what you can do with this tool. It's actually very handy. And those little things, they're not really bad. I mean, it's just need to be aware of them. That's it. But it's very handy, and it helps you to organize your scenery in a far better way than trying to edit the INI file or renaming folders like I used to do before that. That's it. I hope that was helpful. Until next time.